One of the most frustrating things is lying in bed at night, knowing you have a full day tomorrow and knowing you need to get a good night's rest. But you're just lying there wide awake, and as hard as you try, you just can't seem to fall asleep. So today, I'm going to show you a simple hack that will allow you to fall asleep faster and get a much better night's rest, a very peaceful sleep, very simply and easily. Check this out. Welcome to the Power of Quiet, the simple way to self-realization. So if you want total control of your mind and more happiness and abundance in your life, then you've come to the right place. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. You're going to love what we show you, primarily because it is 100% experiential, meaning you don't have to take my word for it, but you can check it out. Try what it is that we show you and see the results that you get firsthand. And if you're a regular here, you love the work that we do and it makes a big difference in your life, then let us know. Hit the like button below and share your gains, share your stories, or ask any questions that you have. Drop those in the comments below and I'll jump in and handle those whenever I can. And speaking of comments, the topic of this video today is based on a comment that was left in a previous video asking if I could tackle the subject of sleep issues. And this is a very interesting subject in the terms of releasing and consciousness, because we hear from various masters like Lester Levenson, the master whose work we continue to put out here through this channel. Lester, when he went free, he was living in New York City, and he talked about there's a period of time in which he had let go of so much of his ego and so much of his negativity that what was left over was just this ever new joy. And this is a term that Yogananda, another master, used about this just state of new and constant joy that's always fresh, always present, coming up in the moment. And so Lester just had all this joy and all this energy coming up, so much that it was even bothersome to him, and he had to walk it off for hours in the middle of the night through New York City. And even Eckhart Tolle, in his book, The Power of Now, he talked about how he got so addicted to the state of presence, how just nice it was, that he didn't want to fall asleep. And he used to drink cup after cup of coffee in order to keep himself awake. But then he mentioned how he realized that the coffee wasn't necessary, that he could just effortlessly remain awake and enjoy being in the state of presence. And now going back to Lester, he also talked about a time when he was still in New York City and he was working as a producer for this radio show. I think it's called the Long John Neville Show. It was kind of like a far out sort of, mysteries sort of show. And it would run throughout the night. And Lester would be present there while the show was airing throughout the night. But then during the day, Lester, as the producer, was going out and finding talent to come and show up and be guests on the show. And he said that for a period of about 6 months, he was literally working around the clock effortlessly, and he didn't sleep at all during that time. And he wasn't missing out on anything, wasn't tired, it wasn't a trick. He just had so much energy that he literally did not need to sleep. Now, in terms of releasing, there's an explanation for this. You see, there's 4 ways to handle a feeling. Either we suppress our feelings, our negative feelings, our fear, our frustration, anger, guilt, all that stuff, the feelings we don't like. We hold them down, right, so that they don't interfere with us, so we can kind of make it through our day. But we're actually just holding on to this energy, and we are using our own energy to keep this suppressed energy down. Now, the second thing that we do with our feelings is we try to escape them. We run away from them, right? We do anything to avoid them. We distract ourselves, right? So this is a good example of how we nowadays distract ourselves from feeling our feelings inside. And again, when we try that tactic, those feelings don't go anywhere, right? They're always there. We're just avoiding them. We're just not looking at them, pretending that they don't exist. And then the third way that we handle our feelings is we express them. We scream, we yell, right? We explode. After we suppress so much, we just can't hold it down anymore, and we just blow. Now, sometimes that might feel like a relief or a release, and it is in a way, but the thing is it's like letting off the extra steam in a pressure cooker. And once that extra steam is released, then the valve closes again and it goes back to building up the pressure until the next time it has to release that steam. So it's like a never-ending process. Now, the fourth thing that we learned how to do, that Lester showed us how to do with our feelings, is release them. Just let them go. And that way, we don't have to manage them anymore. We don't have to fight with them or keep them at bay. And in doing so, because we don't have to wrestle with our feelings anymore and using our positive energy to hold down our negative feelings, that leaves that energy available to us to just have lots of energy. So this is why a lot of releasers who release consistently and release continually and continually to seek to get higher and higher, they find that the more they release, the less they have to sleep, and the more energy that they have, and all of that stuff. So it really is an interesting topic to look at in terms of releasing. But let's take a look at how to fall asleep faster, because this is something that we can use our releasing tools to do very simply, very practically, very easily. All right, so this is how this works. We start by examining the mind. A lot of times we identify with the mind so much that we really don't see it for what it is. We just think that it's us and we have to listen to that thing. But what is the mind? How do we experience it? It's just a sound in our head, a voice that talks to us. Sometimes it plays a nice sound, but most of the time it's not so nice, right? There's a lot of criticizing, a lot of judgments, a lot of worrying, a lot of beating yourself up that goes on coming from this voice in your head. And so arguably 95% of it is very negative. And it doesn't seem to shut up. Now, if we look at the mind more closely, we could see that really all that it is just a recording and playback machine. That's it. It just records things and then it plays it back to us, whether we want to listen to it or not. So, for example, you're going through your day and somebody says something rude, something mean, nasty to you. And what does your mind do all the rest of the day? It just plays it back to you. Oh, you know what that person said. Oh, what an a-hole. Oh, you know what I should have said. Oh, I missed the opportunity to give them a great comeback. Oh, I wish I would have said that. And on and on and on. And even when you're trying to go to sleep at night, it still won't shut up. And even 2 weeks later, even though you're never going to see that person ever again, your mind's still talking about that person and that incident, right? It just locks onto it and it just keeps playing it over and over and over again, whether you want to listen to it or not. And that's one of the reasons why it's difficult to fall asleep at night. It's because you got a noisy mind. It's active, right? It's always talking, complaining, or worried about something. But here's another thing, and this is more acute to what we're going to examine and what we're going to fix so that we can fall asleep faster. Now, the mind is like a recording and playback machine. Another way of looking at that is the mind works just like a computer. And you are the programmer of that computer. You feed that computer instructions. So like you feed it a sound into that head that says, I don't know how to do this. I need to solve this. Go find me a solution. Right? So we ask our mind to find a solution for us. And it's like giving it a set of instructions, almost like giving a set of instructions to Google, right? You go onto the web page and you type in a search query. And with Google, I think the term that they used to use is they called it a spider. All right, so you send that instruction out and it's like a spider. It goes out and it crawls the internet. And it just keeps crawling and gathering data. And it doesn't stop. It just keeps going and going and going. And so you put that instruction into your mind just the same way. It's like a search engine spider that goes out and it just doesn't stop. It keeps looking and looking and looking for information. And you can see this in things that you've been trying to figure out for a long, long time. Right? There's issues in your life, problems, or goals that you've been looking to achieve. You've been trying to figure out, how do I do this? You've been trying to figure it out, like how to have a lot more money, or trying to figure out how to not have to work anymore, things like that. And your mind, it doesn't have an answer, but you give that instruction to your mind, find me that answer. It doesn't know, but it's going to keep on looking. And these things that you've been trying to figure out, that you recognize you've been trying to figure out for a long, long time, your mind is just going in circles. It's looking and looking, but it just can't seem to find the answer. But it just isn't stopping looking because you put that instruction in there. Look for that thing and don't stop until you find it. And so the mind, it won't stop until you actually tell it to stop. Because again, you're the owner of it. You're the programmer. So, what does this have to do with having to fall asleep at night? Well, you gave your mind a lot of instructions about, please solve this for me, please figure out this problem, and so on and so forth. And it's doing this consciously and subconsciously all the time. Every instruction that you gave it to figure something out for you. And so when you're trying to sleep at night, it's still there chewing on problems, trying to figure stuff out, or trying to solve something that it's worried about. And it just won't stop, right? It won't shut up until you actually tell it to. Now here's how you turn that system off and get that process to stop. It starts by simple discrimination. You see, I think a lot of us recognize that our mind gets active and we want it to shut up. We try to get it to shut up and we're like, shut up, mind, please, I'm trying to go to sleep now, but it won't shut up. Because number one, you're not acting like you're the owner of the mind. You're like acting more like it's the owner of you. Yeah, it's talking to you. It won't shut up. You want it to shut up, but it's the boss. It's going to keep talking because it wants to. And therefore, a better tactic to use rather than fight your mind and come from a position where it's like some opposing force, right? Something that's outside of you, that has power over you. Coming from a position where, wait, who's really in charge? And when we start to discriminate, this is another big lesson that is applied in the course that we do, that the ability to discriminate gets us out of being automatically run by our mind and run by our feelings, where all of a sudden, in a split second, we're now in charge. We recognize we're the boss, right? So the ability to discriminate is something that is a powerful asset, and we must use it in a situation like this. And the ability to discriminate, which is inherent in all of us, is something that will allow us to turn off that mind, turn off that noise, and get us to fall asleep really, really fast. All right, so I'm going to guide you through the process right now so you'll be able to see what it's like and see for yourself how you can just quiet that noisy mind, fall asleep faster, and have a beautiful, restful night's sleep. All right, so check this out. Now, imagine going to sleep at night. Just put yourself in that position, all right? Trying to fall asleep. Your mind's active. It's jumping from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing. And just looking at yourself in that position, it's really the same as the position that you're in right now. Whether you're trying to fall asleep and you're lying there with your head on the pillow, or even right now, as you're watching me talk to you, there's things that you're still trying to figure out, right? Maybe it's like a long-term problem or a goal that you've been trying to find an answer for. Or maybe it's just something that you have to do tomorrow and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to get that done? All right, so just take a look. Take a look at something you're trying to figure out in your life right now. All right, you have something in mind? And notice, this probably isn't the first time you've tried to figure this thing out. Notice you've been doing it for a while. And because you've been doing it for a while, if your mind had an answer, if there was an answer that your mind can grasp and bring to you as a solution saying, here, do this, then it would have been handled already. But because you're still trying to figure it out after all this time, isn't it obvious your mind doesn't have an answer? And it probably never will. But notice, you keep going to that mind again and again and again. It's like looking in an empty drawer for an answer that isn't there, but you keep going back to that empty drawer again and again and again, even though you've already seen that it's empty. But it's something that we all do out of habit. Now, how silly is that? To keep going back to an empty drawer for an answer that isn't there, but you keep looking again and again. Now, if your mind doesn't have an answer, we can just put that thing down for the moment. It doesn't know, so I'm going to stop asking it. Right? So this is what I'm talking about by discriminating. You see, without discrimination, you're just going to keep automatically asking your mind over and over and over again, keep looking in that empty drawer over and over again, and you'll do that for another 10 or 20 years, automatically. But the moment you take a look and you examine the simple truth of what's going on, you're discriminating, and that takes you off of automatic. And you see, oh, wait a minute, my mind doesn't have an answer. It doesn't know. So why do I need to keep asking it? Why do I need to keep talking to that thing? All right, so that's step one. Now, the second step here is we examine, and all of us can examine, every time that we go to our mind, asking it to help us find a solution to a problem or to figure something out for us. And it sends us everywhere. Right? Go read this book. Go listen to that expert. Go listen to this other podcast, and on and on and on. And we go look over here, over there, everywhere else for an answer. And we still don't find that answer. What does our friend the mind say? How does it talk to us? It says, well, you haven't been able to figure it out? Here's my advice. Beat yourself up. Isn't that true? When you go around, you try to find an answer, but you can't find it, you're not successful, what is the solution that your mind gives you? Beat yourself up. Disapprove of yourself. Or worry about the situation. And what does that do? When you're beating yourself up or you're worried about it, you just put more noise into that mind. Oh, I'm no good. What's wrong with me? I'm a loser, and on and on and on. And that's just more noise that keeps you awake. Or you're worried about something and you're trying to go to sleep, but you just can't get your mind off this problem that you're worried about. But here's another thing, another point in which we can discriminate and break this habit. Because again, this habit of beating ourselves up, you could recognize it's an automatic thing. You do it automatically. You do it probably 20 times a day, right? You made a mistake, right? Beat yourself up. You lose something, beat yourself up. You said something wrong to somebody, oh, beat yourself up, and on and on and on. And it's just an automatic thing. We all do it out of habit. But when you stop and discriminate, that can very easily take you off of that automatic loop. Right? So you discriminate by asking yourself simply, how does it help me to beat myself up? What is that going to accomplish? Nothing. And who's doing it? I'm doing it. Or if it's something that we're worried about, how does it help me to worry? Have I ever worried myself out of a problem? No. Right? So worrying is a waste of time. And once we see that clearly, it's very easily to just drop it. Because now we're discriminating. Now we're coming not from identifying with the mind, but identifying with the one who's really in charge. And this discrimination, which is just basically asking a very straightforward, simple question, this can help us to break this habit of thinking, this runaway thinking when we're trying to sleep at night. Because here we are, right? So again, imagine yourself laying on the bed, your head's on the pillow, you know you want to go to sleep, you have a big day tomorrow, but you're still thinking about it, something, trying to solve something. Well, stop and discriminate. Well, what do I expect to solve right now in this moment as I'm trying to fall asleep? I'm going to go to sleep. I don't need to solve anything right now. I can let that go for the moment. Or, how does it help me to worry right now? Again, have I ever worried myself out of a problem? And who's doing that? I am. All right, so now that we're discriminating and we've broken that automatic habit, now we can take the steps to quiet that mind and put ourselves in the position where we can just turn the thing off, just set it aside, and do what we intend, which in this case is falling asleep. All right, so again, take a look at that thing that you've been trying to figure out. And you see your mind doesn't have an answer. So if it doesn't have an answer, it's silly to keep asking it. And chances are, it's been telling you to disapprove of yourself, right? To beat yourself up because you haven't been able to solve it. Now, how does it help you to beat yourself up? What does that solve? Is that going to fix anything? Is that going to get you what you want by being negative? And who's doing it? Who's beating yourself up? You are, aren't you? It's your choice after all. So if you're doing it and it doesn't help the situation, now you can make a decision. I'm going to be positive and love myself, or I'm going to be negative and beat myself up. What do you decide? Well, I'm assuming your decision is to be positive, so now, since you're in charge, it's your decision, could you let go of disapproving of yourself a little bit? Since you already see that it's silly, it's a waste of time, could you let go of disapproving of yourself? Just a little bit, not too much, just a little. And could you let go of disapproving of yourself a little bit more? And could you let go of disapproving of yourself a little bit more? And even more. And could you let go of disapproving of yourself even more? And even more. And even more. And again, discriminate. How does it help you to disapprove of yourself? And who's doing it? And what do you decide? Do you decide to be positive or do you decide to be negative? All right, so could you let go of disapproving of yourself a little bit more? And a little bit more. And a little bit more. And even more. And by the way, when you're worried about something, that's just another cute way of disapproving of yourself. Because you're sitting there telling yourself how weak you are, how powerless you are, and how scary that situation is. And what does that solve? Nothing. And who's doing that? You are. So could you let go of that worry? And could you let go of disapproving of yourself a little bit more? And a little bit more. And even more. And could you let that go even more? And even more. And even more. And even more. And could you let that go even more? And a little bit more. And just let go of the worry. You're not going to solve it anyway. No sense to worry about it. And if you have a fear there, just look at the fear and just say yes to the fear. And watch what happens when you say yes to it. And say yes to it a little bit more. And 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 say yes to a little bit more. All right, now, notice how you feel. Now that you let go of disapproving of yourself, you let go of worrying, you let go of fighting with the fear, you just said yes to it instead. Notice how you feel now. A little bit lighter, a little bit quieter, calmer, more peaceful, right? And who did that? You did. Once you stood up and you started to take charge, rather than being on automatic listening to your mind. And now, since you're the one who's in charge, and since it's not such a bad idea to be positive and loving, right, let's take a step in that direction now. Now, could you give yourself some approval? For no reason, just because. Just because it's today. And could you give yourself a little bit more approval? All right, it's just a decision, yes or no. It's not about telling yourself what a great person you are or anything like that. It's not that. It's just simply, could you like yourself? Period. That's all. Yes or no. And could you give yourself a little bit more approval? And could you give yourself even more approval? And could you give yourself even more approval? And could you love yourself a little bit more? And could you love yourself even more? And even more. And how does that feel? Even lighter, right? And take a look at your mind. Notice if it's even quieter now. Now that you're stepping up and deciding to be simply loving. For no reason, just unconditionally loving. And since it feels good, could you give yourself a little bit more approval? Just because you can. And a little bit more. And even more. And check this out. Notice how when you feel nice and loving, when you're giving yourself approval, is there anything to worry about when you're doing that? Do you have any worries when you're just being nice and loving? And see if you have any problem when you're just being nice and loving and you're giving yourself approval. See if there's anything that you need to figure out. Or is it nice enough just to be and just be with yourself and just give yourself love and approval? And again, notice how nice and quiet the mind is getting the more you just let go of disapproving of yourself and you give yourself approval. And that's taking your power back from your mind and having the real you show up. And what do I mean by the real you? Well, going back to the beginning, when we were examining the mind, it's just a sound, a voice in your head that's talking to you, right? You have a voice that talks to you. Who's it talking to? It's obviously talking to somebody. Who? Now, the mistake a lot of us make when we get on automatic is we identify with that voice. We think it's, oh, that's me, and I better listen to it. But we don't recognize there's this voice, and then there's something that's aware of the voice. And that something has no name, has no face, has no beginning or end. It never changes. It's always just perfectly present. And it always has been your whole life, and it always will be beyond this life. But that's just something to notice. And that's a part of you that's all powerful. It has all energy, needs no sleep. It's all loving. And so when you made that decision to take your power back from your mind, take yourself off of automatic, let go of being negative, because that's just the negative tendency when you listen to the mind. That by default is what you get. And you start to take charge and decide to be loving. That's the real you showing up. And that lighter feeling, the love that you feel, that's your natural state. And just notice right now how nice and peaceful and loving you feel. And in this place, and with your mind much quieter, notice how much easier it is to just decide. Since you're in charge, you can just decide, I'm falling asleep. And so be it. All right, so practice this. Now, this is just like an overview of one of the very simple aspects of releasing. But if you want to get more in depth than what I demonstrated here, plus where the real releasing happens, then check out the 21-day Mastering Your Fate course, which goes over all the fundamentals of Lester's method. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Or join us on a 6-week class. I'm starting a new class this September, a 6-week class where we do 2 class sessions each week, plus I do extra video content each week. That's all about mastering your body, mastering pain, mastering your weight, mastering your energy, mastering your strength, and being able to have your body do everything that you want it to do. Right? No matter its age or anything, there's no limitation. And that's provable. So if you want to prove it to yourself, then check that out. I'll put that link in the description below. And practice this. Prove to yourself through your own discrimination whether or not what I've said here is true, and see for yourself, and see how you can now show up and be the boss of everything in your life, of your body, of your finances, everything. All right, prove it. And I'll see you on the next video.